right, good afternoon, everybody. I apologize for the delay. Happy to see some folks here in the audience. I appreciate your participation. For the record, my name is Gabriela Coletta Zapata, District 1 City Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks. Today is August 14th, 2025. The exact time is 2:11. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ep@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken intermittently. We'll start with 2 grants and go to public testimony because I know that there's some folks that want to speak on the first 2 and then go to the third one, which means that it'll happen in the middle as well as the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you are looking to testify virtually and have not done so, please email our central staff liaison, Charisma Chouhan at karishma.chouhan@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on a couple of dockets. So the first of which being docket 1258, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant not to exceed $1,170 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, for the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program. The grant is awarded to the City of Boston through the Parks and Recreation Department for renovations to Moakley Park, located in the neighborhood of South Boston. Second docket is docket 1345, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $644,458 in the form of a grant for the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, awarded by the USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry to be administered by the Office of Workforce Development. The grant will fund to grow an accessible, inclusive, and resilient urban forest. And the last docket is docket 1347, message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $75,000 in the form of a grant for the MVP Planning 2.0 grant, awarded by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to be administered by the Office of Climate Resilience. The grant will fund the work climate resilience, communities have done to date and support communities with new methods, tools, and resources for building climate resilience. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and were referred to this committee on June 25th, 2025 and July 9th, 2025. Today I'm joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Fitzgerald, and Council President Louis Jean. I will now go to them for any opening remarks they may have. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the administration team that is here as well, my colleagues as well. Thank you to my neighbors for participating and tuning in at home as well. Some of my neighbors from South Boston are here and want to welcome them. I also want to say thank you to the City Council Central staff. We had a meeting earlier this morning, a 2-hour meeting. So I want to acknowledge the professional work of City Council Central staff for that important meeting as well. We all share concerns regarding federal funding. As District Councilor of a coastal neighborhood, along with Councilor Coletta Zapata and Councilor Fitzgerald and others, I made a statement on the administration's reckless cuts to coastal resilience funding back in April. We obviously understand the environment we're in and concerns regarding federal funding. I have spoken out many times throughout this year, whether it be cuts to veterans benefits, NIH health funding, and others. And at the same time, we are here to listen to residents and what their opinion is about as well. I think it's important for my residents in South Boston and in Dorchester, which borders John's district, including youth sports groups, civic organizations, our neighbors especially in Mary Ellen McCormick. I know Boston Harbor Now is here, South Boston and Acción as well. Again, want to welcome them, and I want to listen to them and their feedback. I support this grant. In the name of transparency and public process, I also want to, again, hear from my neighbors and learn from them about their experiences and how this grant may or may not, how this grant will benefit the community. August is obviously a difficult time with people often going away and vacations. In a perfect world, I would have preferred that we do this after Labor Day, but I know it's important that we do it now. But again, want to welcome residents from public housing that are listening and viewing this on television, including Mary Ellen McCormick and Lynch Homes at Old Colony, West 9th Street, West Broadway. I'm proud to represent the largest number of residents of any district city council living in public housing. I look forward to today's discussion and continue the dialogue with the community as we can continue this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we know, the environment does not see political boundaries or districts, and so anything that affects one of us affects us all, especially with the proximity. I'm most interested in the Moakley, the grant, the money coming for the Moakley Park as it affects and touches my district, as well as its relation to Morrissey Boulevard, all the way down to Tinian Beach, et cetera. But of course, also huge advocate for improving our tree cover citywide, so also interested in that. But definitely support all these grants. I'm here today to learn more about each of them and the specifics, and so that's what I would ask that we could talk about. But other than thank you for being here, panel. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Louis-Jean.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership and for all the work you've done on making sure that we're pushing forward on grants. I will undoubtedly be supporting these grants as I have in the past. This is important federal dollars, especially in this climate. Every day there's a new assault on the city of Boston from this administration, so it's really important that we don't delay and that we accept these important funds. I want to thank the folks from Boston Harbor Now who are here, Jay, Mercy, Linda, nice to meet you. I think it was a few weeks ago I was with you all on a Boston Harbor Now cleanup, and have really appreciate how much you draw community into making everyone feel like this is their waterfront, and that we all have a role to play in the work of resilience, in addition to these grants, in addition to the work that we do here on the council. The work really about protecting our neighborhoods really lies in centers and community. And I also want to thank the administration, because you all understand that as well. And I know you all work in deep partnership with Boston Harbor Now and all of our coastal residents, because we know that these grants are an important part. They should be a rote part of our work, that we just take them in and we continue the work, but the work really is lies in community on those Saturday cleanups that you all do, and really engage in community members. So I want to thank you, because we really do follow your leadership in so many different ways, and I'm grateful to have you as partners here in the city. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Louis-Jean. I also have my own opening remark, but then we'll pass it to the panel. Just want to echo all of the gratitude, especially to Boston Harbor Now. I see we have Hassan Faruqi here from BCAN. Hopefully able to hear from some BHA residents, from Mary Ellen McCormick and Lynch, and ensuring that everybody's voices are heard and at the center of each and every conversation. Today's dockets include several grants that directly strengthen Boston's ability to meet the climate and environmental challenges of our time. Chief among them is this $1.1 million FEMA grant, the BRIC grant, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant from Moakley Park. This is a project that is central to our coastal resilience strategy. This is more than just a park renovation. It is an investment in our city's ability to withstand major storm events, sea level rise, and flooding. Moakley Park sits on the front line of our shoreline, and delays in resilience work puts residents, businesses, and critical infrastructure at risk. We should and must be moving quickly to put these dollars to work, especially given the challenges presented by the Trump administration's environmental policy changes. We're also considering grants to grow our urban forest through USDA funding under the Inflation Reduction Act, ensuring that all neighborhoods, especially those disproportionately affected by heat, benefit from shade, cooling, and improved air quality. Additionally, the MVP Planning 2.0 grant will allow the city to build on years of local climate planning, providing new tools, methods, and resources to support resiliency in every community. These resources aren't just simply line items, they are urgent lifelines. Whether protecting our shoreline, expanding our tree canopy, or enhancing our climate planning, each grant represents a step towards a safer, healthier, and more resilient Boston. And I want to thank, again, the administration for being here and all of the work that you do. I see that we've been joined by Councilor Weber. I will go to you for any opening remarks that you may have, but I just want to acknowledge that we've been given a letter of absence from Councilor Pepin, and I think that's it. I'm just going to say that that's it until I get anything else. Okay, great. Councilor Weber, you have the floor for any opening remarks.
No, I'm just looking forward to learning about these grants. I mean, especially, I don't know, I think the early ones we're dealing with seem great, and just want to figure out how we can get these accepted and used for the community. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Co-Chair Weber. Okay, now we'll start with docket 1347. This is the MVP grant, and I'll hand the floor over to Elizabeth Jameson, who's the Director of Climate Advocacy and Planning within the Environment Department, as well as Catherine Diaz, Director of Climate Action, Innovation, and Analytics within the Environment Department. I also just want to mention that we've been joined by Chris Osgood, who is the Director of Climate Resilience, and Marin Bracco, I apologize if I said your name wrong, please feel free to correct me, Senior Project Manager of the Parks and Recreation Department, as well as Joseph Lee, who's the Chief of Staff of the Worker Empowerment Cabinet. But I'll now pass it over to Elizabeth or Catherine for any remarks that you have or for presentation of the slideshow. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Hi, I am Elizabeth Jameson, Director of Climate Policy and Planning in the Environment Department. Here today to talk about the $75,000 grant from the MVP program, $25,000 of which we are using to supplement our engagement with the Climate Action Plan to help identify community climate resilience priorities, and the remaining $50,000 will be used for a seed project that is born out of those priorities.
Okay. All right, thank
It's
you for
pretty
that.
straightforward.
Thank you for that. And my understanding is that you have a 3 p.m. hard stop.
That's right.
Okay, so I think what I will do is, in the interest of time, I'll have a round robin with my colleagues for questions specifically for you, and then we can go into the other two dockets. I'll start with Councilor Flynn for any questions that he may have, and then I'll go to Councilor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'll give it to my colleagues to ask questions if they'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fitzgerald?
Yeah, no, engaging residents is always a difficult task, and making sure all voices are heard, having done it for my entire city career as well. So I wish you the best and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Louis-Jean?
No questions. Thanks for the work you do.
Councilor Weber?
Yeah, sorry to waste all your hard work preparing for this hearing, but no questions for me.
Okay, I have one hard question.
Okay.
So it talks about supporting communities with new methods, tools, and resources for building climate resilience. What are those new tools, resources, and methods that you talk about?
That's a great question. So I mentioned that the first $25,000 is used to engage with communities. We are looking to hear what the community wants to see. So we're hoping that a lot of those tools will come out of the conversations that we're having in the communities.
Okay, that makes sense. And sorry, my last follow-up question is that we have an MVP grant currently in the design phase for Resilient Eastie, which is closer to the Belle Isle, Boston and Revere border. Will anything be subjected to this particular line item? Are you planning to do any community engagement in Eastie for that, or is this supposed to be allocated for somewhere else?
It depends on what comes out of the community priorities. So if that's what we hear from the community, then that is not prohibited from the use of the remaining funds.
Chris, I see you inching towards the mic. Is there anything
No,
you want to add?
Elizabeth did a great, they are separate grants. Certainly there may be an overlap in engagement. No doubt we'll do engagement in East Boston as part of the MVP 2.0 grant, but they're not directly tied.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
it for me. You all are free to go, I guess, or if you want to stay, it's up to you. You're more than welcome to. We'll transition to docket 1258, which is the FEMA brick grant. I'll pass it over to Chris Osgood and Marin for any presentation or opening remarks that you have. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councilor Cleta Zapata. Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Fitzgerald, Council President Louis Jean, Councilor Weber. Again, I'm Chris Osgood. I have the great pleasure of leading the City of Boston's Office of Climate Resilience and serving as a senior advisor to Mayor Wu. All of us in this room are incredibly focused on protecting our residents and enhancing our communities, particularly as we look at the climate risks that are in front of us, from extreme heat to increased stormwater flooding to coastal flooding, which is in some ways the focus of the particular grant action that we're looking at right now. This work that we are doing, and actually all three of these grants, help us take very significant steps forward on these efforts. The work that Elizabeth and Catherine are leading gives us a foundation to continue to do great engagement around some of the most important strategies and critical demonstration projects around our climate action plan. This grant that Marin Braco is leading really helps us get the design right, working with the community in one of the most important parks and the most critical flood paths in the City of Boston. And Joseph later will be talking about how we can use federal funding to help ensure that we are building a workforce locally to be able to respond to the climate risks in front of us. I will talk briefly about the Moakley grant, turn it over to Marin, who knows and has been leading this project. But I do also just want to recognize Taisha Rogers and Kwana Wise, who lead our finance and engagement work within the Environment, Energy, and Open Space Cabinet, respectively, and are really critical, important partners on this effort. So briefly to talk the context of this before turning it over to Marin. The Moakley Park project really for us is a signature project, is a very top priority project as we think about both open space investment and resilience. And over the last number of years, as Marin will go through, we've been engaging the community to make sure that we are doing two things. One, that we're getting the design right to build an even better park, and second, that we're getting the design right to ensure an even safer neighborhood from the climate risks, in particular coastal flooding that is in front of us. This is a $1.17 million grant provided, as Councilor Cleta Zapata said, through FEMA and their Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. Work from this grant, the money from this grant, will ensure that we can do that continued on-the-ground engagement to get that design right, to ensure that we're building a great park and protecting the critical South Boston neighborhood, and over time, a much larger swath of the City of Boston. What we're going to go through is two things. One, provide some broad context on Moakley Park, go through the project schedule, the past engagement that has been done, and the overall sort of intent of this work, and then really dive a little bit more deeply into what this grant in particular unlocks and some of the steps ahead. And as has been said by a number of you, we would not be here without the immense support of folks who are both in this room around us and watching online and in the community. This project really has emerged from, and its design principles have come from the feedback we've heard from residents so far. So I'll turn it over to Marin and we'll walk through the project.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. As Chris mentioned, this has been an active project in the city for over 8 years, so I'll take you through a bit of that context, just explain the work that we've been doing as background to the next steps that this grant will enable. So I'm sure most of you know Moakley Park is located in South Boston, just behind Carson Beach. It's very accessible by walking for the South Boston community, but also right on the Red Line and along the Harbor Walk, which makes it really accessible to most of the city. We see it as a really critical part of the park system, being the largest waterfront park that Boston has at almost 60 acres. It's also one of the largest active recreation fields we have in the city, particularly for ball fields and the number of other sports that are played there today. As I'm sure we'll talk about and you'll hear from testimony, it is in a state of disrepair right now, and the opportunities to both build resiliency and to build a signature park is really exciting. So this map here is showing the 2071% storm. So you'll see that floodwaters from Morrissey Boulevard, Fort Point Channel, and Moakley Park would combine to flood much of South Boston and then go into surrounding neighborhoods. Through the BRIC grant application process, we went through a benefit cost analysis, and so we have some numbers to understand what the impacts would be. Cumulative effects of storms between now and 2070 would cost the city more than $600 million. which means for the cost of the barrier that we're proposing, the city gets $16 in benefits for every dollar we spend. A lot of the benefits that the park offers today is through recreation. In any storm event, we would see, if we did nothing, we would see fields taken out of commission for over a month each year from coastal flooding. Even this year, given the conditions of the stormwater and the groundwater, there's been almost a month that the fields were unusable because of the existing conditions. We also anticipate over 200 structures being impacted. Two of the largest housing communities, Mariel and McCormick and Old Colony, are really at the front lines of this, right behind the park. And so this is an overview of sort of the schedule of the project starting back in 2018, and we've also included the amount of time it took to get the BRIC application from beginning to end. So the vision plan kicked off this project after it was identified through the climate ready planning as a major flood pathway. There was a couple of years of technical analysis and a lot of community input that led us to the schematic design, which is roughly 30% design. We used that work to apply for the BRIC grant in March of 2021, and we received the notice to proceed on that grant in March of 2025. So it was a 4-year process to get to this point. During that time, there were a number of questions from FEMA that we had to respond to. Part of that was developing that benefit cost analysis and a lot of technical work from our consultant team. While we were going through that, we were advancing the first phase of the project and also advancing the connectors, which is where the berm needs to go outside of the park on the north and south side of the park in order to close the flood pathways. Throughout this process, there's been a lot of community engagement. So I know the text here is small on the screen, but we've done both a mix of formal open houses to get specific feedback on the design, as well as attending existing events in the neighborhood. We had online surveys. We received, those were in 5 different languages. We've got input from all over the city. And then this is summarizing the engagement that happened in the last few years. And I'll note that during that, that gray bar represents the BRIC grant application process, where the design was actually less active, but we continued with our partners at Boston Harbor Now and South Boston and Action to have seasonal events, to start those monthly cleanups, to begin to build community in the park and create stewardship. Just this year alone, we've had over 1,000 attendees and volunteers at different events, and we have removed over 300 pounds of trash from the park. And these are just some images to show sort of the range of engagement that's happened from one-on-one meetings, focus groups, events at the park, online and virtual information throughout the pandemic. And then these are images from the last couple of years while we were hosting events at the park and the monthly cleanups. And so now I'll go into some of the feedback we heard from community throughout this process and how that informed the proposed design. The number one priority from the athletes, or the biggest users of the park, is that we need fields that are dry. And right now, as I mentioned, it's a combination of stormwater and a really high groundwater table that mean it takes days for the fields to dry out after a flood event. And so the proposed design will put those new fields behind the coastal flood barrier and improve the stormwater drainage and address the groundwater issues. We'll also be adding lights, shaded seating, benches, dugouts. We've heard from the community a request for concessions and restrooms to make this like a really standout athletic facility. A lot of people also use the park today for more informal uses like sport courts and walking and jogging. So the design will incorporate a multi-use path all around the edge of the park. The berm itself will actually be a fully accessible path with a 20-foot wide multi-use path running through the middle of the park with other loops or designed in between for shorter distances. Families really want to be able to bring their kids to the park and feel safe and comfortable, so we've added in a lot more playgrounds, water play, places that seniors could come and sit at a bench under shade and just enjoy the park in a more passive setting. And so this is a sort of before and after. So the black and white image shows the existing park. You've got a lot of athletic fields with lawn that's not very well used in between, and real stark, very few trees and benches. And so in the proposed design, we've laid out the fields to sort of maximize efficiency and flexibility, add in programming in between those fields. At the same time, we're doubling the tree canopy, managing stormwater and groundwater. And so now I'll get into the specifics of the grant and the scope in the next phase of work. And so the BRIC grant specifically will fund the design and permitting of the berm and coastal landscape. So that's in the dark blue. The berm starts at the high point behind the stadium and goes all the way through the park and into the MWRA property to the north. And the light blue is that coastal landscape, which adds in additional layers of resiliency, slowing down the water and absorbing it before it hits the berm. For the Parks Department, it's really important that this park is a community asset and not just a resilience infrastructure project, and we are supporting, through our capital budget, the construction, the design and construction of Phase A, sort of behind the berm, so that includes a premier baseball field, a basketball court, and community plaza. We are also funding the design development of the rest of the park. For now, we are calling that Phase B, and that will help us figure out how to phase and construct subsequent phases. I'll just point out that this is a match grant, so the federal contribution is 70% of that total $1.17 million. And this is the schedule as we see it for the next phase. In the last few months, we've been continuing that park activation through the cleanups and events. We've also been working with elected officials and park users to refine and to continue to iterate on the design to make sure that it best serves their needs. Having this grant will allow us to continue that work and to provide momentum to have a construction-ready project by 2027, and to move into construction ideally between 2027 and 2029. We're expecting that to be a year or two process, with the design and construction of the rest of the park to happen subsequently. I'll note that throughout all of that, we will have continued community engagement. At the heart of this, it is a neighborhood park, and if we don't have South Boston residents' input, then there's no reason for us to be doing this work. And this is just a more detailed scope of the breakdown of the BRIC scope versus the city capital scope. And so for the design for the BRIC scope, that's looking again at the berm and coastal landscape. It is currently at 75% complete. We'll be taking that to 100% complete. And then permitting is a big part of this work. And if you hear us talking about timelines, it's because local, state, and federal timelines are quite extensive, and there is urgency there to meet our grant deadlines. There'll be continued technical analysis. This is a very complicated site, sort of what's happening underground to understand the contamination and the groundwater and the soil conditions. That will continue to happen as part of this, and then continued community and stakeholder engagement. Part of that will be sort of summarizing what we've heard in the past and confirming that that's still valid and reflective of the community's needs today, and then asking more specific questions about the character of the park in that first phase. And then in parallel, we'll be advancing the design for the rest of the park. That will include phasing, cost estimation, and continued community engagement. And so this is a plan that zooms in on that first phase. So the berm is that 20-foot wide path that you see running the lengths or parallel to Day Boulevard. In front of that, there's a picnic area and coastal landscape with walking paths and boardwalks. And on the dry side, we have an operations and maintenance building, a premier baseball field, a basketball court and community plaza, as well as parking. And this is an eye-level view of what that would look like from the picnic area, which is at the level of the berm, which puts you at this point where you can sort of see out and over to the beach and into the harbor. Will be a great place for community gatherings and picnics. And this is an overview, sort of hovering over the north, so that where that dog park is and the MWRA building behind Babe Ruth Boulevard. So you've got Carson Beach, Day Boulevard, the coastal landscape, and here you can really see how that berm and path really integrate into the landscape. And the athletic fields and other facilities are a little bit lower, about 5 or 6 feet lower on the dry side of the park. And so this is just, I'll end here with an overview of the proposed plan and just sort of some closing thoughts. This work seeks to proactively make our city more resilient and to provide a neighborhood park that really serves South Boston. The opportunity this grant unlocks to have a construction-ready project is 8 years in the making. I think I speak for myself, my team, and park users and people that care for the park today that we are really excited about this next chapter and are really ready to start moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I do have a couple questions that I will just quickly ask as chair because I think it'll help frame the conversation. But I do want to underscore a certain point that was made, but not necessarily talked about in great length, but the amount of community meetings and charrettes that you've held since 2018 on this particular project. Can you just reiterate, and it didn't have it in one particular place, which is why I'm asking, but do you have a number of community meetings that you've held on this project in total?
Total number, no. I can go back to the slide. We've got the 2 slides that we've broken it up by phase. Yeah, we have it broken out by phase, and because there's been 5 phases, I don't have a total number.
Okay,
but
that's what I was looking for. No worries, no worries.
We can get back to you with that.
Is there anything that you're presenting here that's new information? Like, has this already been vetted by the community since all of the meetings that you've previously held in 2018?
There's been some changes to just how we design the sports fields to accommodate more flexibility and increase the playable hours that we've talked about sort of in directly with coaches and folks using the park today in the last few months. I think that's the only, it's not a change in the layout, it's sort of a change in some of the specific materials and design.
But that's from conversations that you've had with some of the leaders in the sports community in
Correct.
South Boston. Okay, great. And then part of the scope of the BRIC grant is community and stakeholder engagement. This is where you'll be providing confirmation from the community on previous feedback received in 2022 and 2023. It says that you'll get feedback on activities, materials, furnishing, and character within the coastal landscape and the multi-use path. Can you just expand and elaborate on the community process that this will help fund and how you plan to be intentional about going into some of the BHA properties in South Boston?
Sure. So I think it's really important to have a mix of engagement, and so that means like going to events where people will already be and having a table, and we've already started doing that this month. Some of that will be having events specific to Moakley, and I've been working on getting contacts at Mary Ellen and Old Colony and other South Boston organizations to make sure that if I'm sending out information that it's getting to their communities directly. I think it's really important too to have smaller group conversations, so we've already started some of those around some specific items like the athletic fields, just to be able to have like one-on-one or small group conversations to get really specific feedback. I think we'd also like to do some Spanish-led engagement with some of the communities that live right near the park.
Great. And I did have some questions around capital planning, but I think that those have been answered. And my last question has to do with the cancellation of phase 2, which is kind of what this means. Given FEMA's decision to cancel Phase 2 construction funding, I guess what specific steps are you all taking to ensure that Phase 1 design work proceeds without delay?
Happy to take that. So, as the council was referencing, the initial grant application for Moakley Park that we applied for essentially at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, was a $24 million grant, spring of this year. A portion of that was canceled. That is the Phase 2 funding. That was a little over $22 million to be able to support the actual construction. That first phase of funding, though, is what we're focused on today. By being able to go through this accept and expand and get that work started, it helps us, as Maren says, sort of just have those continued community conversations, refine this design, and get this to a place where we can eventually break ground. That is still multiple years away because there's a number of design conversations and permitting steps in front of us. And that runway, during the course of that runway, we'll be looking at the right way to fund this. I will note that the 20 states, including the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, have sued for the restoration of the BRIC program, including that $22 million that is currently in the courts.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all so much for the work that you do. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a couple of my questions were already asked, so I'll try to either rephrase them or move on, I guess. This is a park that's been near and dear to me, my family, for practically over 100 years. I live right down the road from Moakley Park. My son still plays baseball at Moakley Park in Senior Babe Ruth, Little League Babe Ruth and Senior Babe Ruth. I've been involved in this issue since 2018, as have the South Boston community and elected officials as well. So I do want to make sure that residents are heard. So I know one of the questions was about community engagement. You mentioned you met with the youth sports coaches recently. Just going forward, could I be invited to those?
Of course.
And as a parent, as a city councilor and leader in the neighborhood, I really need to be at those meetings. Did you meet with the South Boston Little League?
Yes, we met with the president, Joe Cristino.
Okay. How about South Boston Babe Ruth?
We met with Kevin Lally and Buddy Lane.
And when were all these meetings?
Just in the last couple of months.
Okay. South Boston Youth Soccer and Lacrosse?
We have not met with them yet.
Okay. I know. All right. So I really want to be added to those meetings. That's important for me. Can we make that a priority?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to work with state officials on what role they are playing?
So we've had a number of conversations with DCR, and Maren, please feel free to add, correct, particularly because of their, obviously, ownership of Carson Beach, the ownership of Day Boulevard, and the importance of the two parcels north and south of Moakley Park, which we refer to as the Moakley Connectors, which are principally in state hands. So there's a number of coordinating conversations, principally with DCR, to some degree with DCAM, on this project.
Okay. Just as an FYI, I have a upcoming hearing on tree canopy in District 2, but the reason I bring that up, I know we need more trees in Moakley Park. Tell me about your plan as it relates to trees in Moakley Park.
Sure. So we'll be preserving as many existing trees as we possibly can, and then doubling the total number of trees. As it is today, they are almost all one species, which would not tolerate saltwater inundation and increased heat. So we'd be diversifying the trees and making sure that they could survive in the climate as we move forward.
So how many trees would you have to eliminate?
I think that's something we'd be working out in the next phase of design, but from the beginning, the intent was to preserve as many as possible.
And what type of trees would you be planting at Moakley?
I could certainly provide a planting plan, but it's a mix of native coastal landscape.
Okay. I know Senator Collins and Rep. Beal are working on trees nearby at the beach in the greenie, as they call it, as well. I also want to acknowledge South Boston and Axion in Boston Harbor now on their cleanups, and city officials, on cleanups at Moakley Park. And they usually have them once a month or so. I try to make them as much as I can, but just want to acknowledge my neighbors in South Boston. Going back to tree canopy, South Boston has only 8% coverage, well below the city average. Heat island effect, as you know, is a big issue. So I know you'd have to work with the state officials, but are you also trying to add trees on the Carson Beach side too, or?
As part of this project, we're slowly looking at city land.
Okay.
Raise that with the DCR team.
Okay. So, Chris, let me ask you, with this burn, is that the major infrastructure that's taking place in Moakley Park, knowing that federal funds are now, the majority of federal funds have been taken away from the city? Is that accurate to say?
From a resilience perspective, and Marion, please add or correct, the berm is certainly the principal feature. Overall, and over the course of the entire project, the majority of the investment will actually be in the park itself and the playing features of the park itself and the passive spaces and improved tree canopy that Marion spoke to. In addition to the berm, there are a number of resilience features that are really about stormwater. Just as you well know, the conditions of the fields right now after a severe rainstorm, they tend to be in poor condition. And so there's a large investment in stormwater-related resilience elements in addition to the coastal resilience infrastructure.
Okay. Now, with this infrastructure improvement, what impact will it have on the size of, or reduction, or maybe increase of any type of athletic field in Moakley Park with this new burn? Would it make something smaller? Would they make the athletic fields larger? Can you give me an idea about that?
Happy to start, and Marion, please feel free to add. So in many ways, the question you're raising is what this grant allows us to explore and define. So it is very helpful to have this funding to help us dive more into that question. What we will see is a park that we strongly believe will be able to protect the residents of Maryland McCormick, protect the residents of the Amherst Homes at Old Colony, and actually expand both the quality and availability of ball fields within Moakley Park. Because of the alignment of any of the infrastructure that we're talking about, there will likely be impacts on the number of fields or potentially the size of the fields, but those are design specifics that we would be working through as part of this process. And again, our commitment is, as Marion outlined, is really to make sure that as we make investments, we're making investments to have those ball fields be more available, be higher quality, and add those features which we've heard in the public process really matter to your constituents, things like additional play spaces, better walking and jogging paths, et cetera, which we will be able to accomplish and incorporate into the resilience features.
Okay. Chris, one of the major challenges residents asked me, they would say to me, they got Moakley Park, Mary Ellen McCormick residents, and Lynch residents. Just down the road, as you know, is West Broadway, not too far. Probably diagonal across the way is West 9th Street as well, a senior building, persons with disabilities. So they're all physically close. But the major challenge they say to me is they love Moakley Park. Physically, it's very tough to get there. And I agree with them. I think we all agree with them for various reasons. But just going on the on Old Colony. As you know, the traffic is fast. The Rotary is challenging. Andrews Square area is challenging. So factoring all these issues in, transportation issues, but also factoring pedestrian safety, how are we going to connect residents physically from public housing developments to Moakley in a safe way?
It's a great question. I'm happy to start, and Marion, please feel free to. So while this grant is specific to the park boundaries itself, to your point, we want to build a great park which is accessed easily and safely by everybody in the neighborhood. There is some specific work which is happening around some of the crossings at Babe Ruth and sort of the northern end of this park. But much of that work along Old Colony essentially is work that was being considered in part through the work that both you and Councilor Fitzgerald have been a part of that sort of broader Morrissey Corridor Preble South effort. So there is a look at the crossings into this park, and while that's separate from this grant, it is clearly a companion set of work that's really critical to the success of the park.
And I should note that, and Councilor Fitzgerald can also obviously talk about it, but residents coming from Harbor Point are in the same same way as it's challenging to get from Harbor Point, even though it's close, over past the MDC police station because of traffic. Chris, the overpass at Mary Ellen McCormick and at Moakley Park, what is the status of that, or is there any short-term plans, or is there any long-term plans as it relates to the overpass? But residents have expressed to me concerns, obviously, about the infrastructure, the safety of the infrastructure, but also some quality of life issues as well impacting residents. We unfortunately, we do see a lot of drug use in and around that area. And a lot of residents would say to me they don't necessarily feel safe at the overpass, using the overpass. So I'm just trying to think out loud, what is the plan for the overpass itself?
Marion, you may have, I don't have an update on the overpass, but happy to loop back to you on that. To your point around the residents from Harbor Point, there is work that, with credit to Marion, that the city is doing in collaboration with the state to think about the crossing of Day Boulevard and that sort of southern section, really to make sure that every resident from Harbor Point can be able to more easily access over time Moakley Park. Happy to give you some more details on that and happy to find out the answer on the overpass.
Okay.
The only thing I'll follow up on is to say that we have met directly with the design team for Mary Ellen McCormick to ensure that the entries and crossings from that development tie directly to entries into the park, and that we're creating a really welcoming space right where they would cross. I think in an ideal scenario, the street feels safe for people to walk across, and we don't need to rely on an overhead pass, but that has not been part of the park scope.
Oh, okay. No particular changes to the overpass?
Not currently, no.
Okay. But on the other hand, when people are crossing in the crosswalk near the overpass, crossing the boulevard, the avenue, especially parents with little kids, I am very concerned about them crossing the street because cars are going at a far great speed along the avenue. That's why I do like the overpass, but I know it's very challenging. But if we're not making any changes to the overpass, then what are we doing about providing better pedestrian safety?
And I think Chris and I have both worked closely with BTD on the planning efforts that they're going through and with the state on Morrissey Boulevard improvements through Preble Circle.
Okay, and I know it's John's district, but does that include the Kosciuszko Circle, K Circle? Is that also part of it?
So the intersection is the wrong word. The connection between the Kosciuszko Circle project and this project itself is really ensuring that we understand how the literal elevations of Kosciuszko Circle may adjust, or the elevations may need to be adjusted within Moakley Park. So there's less of a direct connection. The connection, though, between these projects is really, to your point, Councilor, and appreciate your continued focus on it here and across the city and across the district is ensuring those safe connections for folks who are accessing the park. And so, as Maren mentioned, happy to continue to have those conversations, engage you in those conversations. So we're not just looking at the park, but we're also having you involved in some of the conversations about access to the park itself.
Thank you. That, Councilor Flynn, that's been about 15 minutes, but we will circle back if there's any additional questions, because I know that this is in your district, but I want to be respectful to Councilor Fitzgerald and Councilor Louis-Jean. Thank you. Councilor Fitzgerald, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, it's my first time seeing what's going on inside the park. It seems to be very exciting, and while I can't say I'm very athletic, I do like athletic activities, right? And it seems that this really has a great amount of it in there. But instead of focusing on what's inside the park at the moment, I'm thinking about how around the park is affected, sort of carrying off of what Councilor Flynn was just discussing. There are no road changes proposed with this plan, right? This is all internal to the park.
There's no change. I'm off this. There's no change to road design or use. There is a anticipated slight change in road elevation particularly on Babe Ruth, but doesn't change the use or cross section.
Right, and so I would imagine that in going forward with all the other changes that we've talked about, especially with the Morrissey Boulevard Commission and all those proposed changes, that this will all sort of work together in that regard. Now, one thing I've noticed, because I do take Day Boulevard every day to work and back, is that obviously even on the beach, right, you've got the Boston Social Sports Club and they do their volleyball and things like that. With all the excellent things that look to be going on inside, there's going to be a lot of people coming here. Not all of them of which are going to walk or take the T. Is there any parking for anything involved there? Just because I can imagine on a beautiful day and this whole park being used, that would be, I mean, upwards to 1,000 people, if not more. And so, yeah, just wondering about other transit to the park, because I know that the only stop we could take is really to get off at JFK.
There is parking. We are not reducing the parking within the park, so there are a few dispersed parking lots today, and we would be essentially putting those in similar locations in the future.
Do you know how many spots that is in total?
I could get back to you on that.
Great, thank you. Another thing I was thinking here is when we're talking about the species of plants, and again, I know we're talking about a grant here, and I don't want to get too in the weeds, literally, but I was thinking about if the combination of having an arboretum and an athletic center here, and I think, what does it take, 26 species to be an arboretum or something like that?
I don't know. Probably.
Do you guys know that?
I don't know
I think you have to have,
that.
there's a certain amount I only know because of my dad's park in Mission Hill, I think is now officially an arboretum, and I think it's 26 species have to be there. But to combine both an arboretum and athletic fields, I think would be a pretty cool thing to be able to say, and I wonder if that would be a first in the country, first in the state, I don't know, but I don't know how many species could exist this close to coastal anyway. So I don't even know if you can get to that number, but to be able to call it an arboretum, just throwing that out there as a potential idea.
I love that.
Thanks.
I will say with all credit to Maren that there's a huge amount of focus on improved coastal landscape as part of this. And so I think there really is an interesting opportunity to advance that idea.
Great. Yeah, I guess, I'm just trying to think of, as the development that comes up Morrissey Boulevard as well, there'll be a lot more people that will be attracted to this park. I think Councilor Flynn sort of, brought it up, and I don't want to hammer it home, but just to understand the amount of units with both at Harbor Point and the potential development down there as we go up Morrissey. There's already, I think there's a project being approved today that's right next to the Shaw's there that is 17 stories tall, and it will be housing many, many folks as well that will be looking to use this. So both that pedestrian and vehicular travel routes and where they could go, because my fear for for Councilor Flynn and others is that, and myself, is that all of a sudden people say, want to go, so where do we park? We'll park in the neighborhood, right? And I don't know, I think we can all attest to the fact that South Boston doesn't really have the capacity to take on any more parking in the neighborhood. So I hope that folks would find other means, but I doubt that is the case. And so, yeah, I think that's it. This is very interesting. I love what's going on the interior, and I know that that's what this is about. But of course, what that brings and the focus on the exterior, both transportation-wise, would be my main concern as we go forward. And of course, going part and parcel with all the other advances and designs, whether it's the K Circle redesign, Morrissey Boulevard redesign, Preble Circle redesign, and all the development that's to occur in this area. To try and get that future outlook. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Louis-Jean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one question regarding the stormwater management features. I know that we've been working in Moakley Park for quite some time, and it's great to actually see the progress being made. But is the stormwater feature, is that green water, are there gray water features to that? Did you talk about, if you talked about that, I missed it, apologies, but are there any gray water features?
No, I didn't mention it. There will be underground storage tanks under each of the sports fields.
Okay. Underground
storage.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question, because we've had hearings and we talk about the balancing out the green water and gray water infrastructure, and that's really important that we're able to do both, to think about the natural conditions and how we're using them to do the work of stormwater management. So no questions. I will be enthusiastically supporting these grants. I will actually be at Moakley Park later today. So I just want to thank you all for your diligence and for the work that you do, both at Moakley Park and South Boston. So many people who are invested in the park and around our city, around resiliency. And we have the resiliency queen here in our Madam Chair, Councilor Gabriela Coletta Zapata, who has been really leading the efforts on the council on making sure that we are building out dynamic and a dynamic coastal resiliency plan that's up to snuff in all of our neighborhoods, including our EJ, environmental justice neighborhood. So thank you, Councilor Coletta Zapata, for your leadership on that, and thank you to the administration, and again to the folks from Boston Harbor now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll circle back to Councilor Flynn if he has any outstanding questions, and then we'll go to public testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, can you, can I get a confirmation that we are keeping the street hockey rink? That's what a lot of residents have asked me. We are keeping the street hockey rink. Okay, I just wanted to get a commitment for my constituents. Chris, underneath the, under the park as well, underneath the park, especially the area more towards, you know what Babe Ruth Drive is? So what is physically under there?
It's the last one. Is that? Oh, yeah.
Or any of that area along the boulevard, from that area up to the state police? What is physically underneath the Moakley Park grass there?
Absolutely. Do you want to?
So that's an MWRA storage tunnel, which goes to the headwork site, which is just north of the park past Babe Ruth.
Okay. No, but underneath, on Moakley property, underneath Moakley property, underground, what is underground?
So that easement, it is partly, if you can see, partly within the park, and the easement extends well into the park, so the berm is actually built right up to that easement to make sure that they have access to that pipe and that we're not putting any additional loads on it so that it remains functional. I'm not sure if you're also referring to the fact that there's an underground earthen berm that was built when Moakley was built. You know, this was all mud flats.
Yeah, right.
Historically. So there's an earthen berm underground, which is why a lot of the park is so saturated with water today. And so that's what sort of holds it in and created that land back in the early 1900s.
So a good portion of the park was the Atlantic Ocean at one time.
It was mud flats, yeah.
How much of the Atlantic Ocean was it?
It was most of the park. It's a a very uneven line, but basically the only natural high ground is around the stadium. That was actual landmass.
Okay, around the stadium, Saunders Stadium.
Yeah.
Okay. So during the construction phase, what impact will it have on the athletic fields?
That is a really important question, and we've already started having conversations with our recreation team to ensure that any disruption to fields at the park, we make sure that we have another park in the neighborhood, and we've had a couple improvements to parks nearby that are city parks, and then also potentially looking at some of the state-owned parks nearby to ensure that people have, all the sports leagues have a place to play.
But how do we guarantee that? How do we know that that's going to in fact happen though?
I think that's part of the work in the next phase as we understand in more detail the design and where that berm falls relative to the proposed and existing fields.
Yeah, I think I need something more concrete than that. I need specifics on when the construction does take place, the impact it has on athletic teams will be significant. So when that infrastructure is taking place, that construction is taking place, I want to know specifically where where athletic teams will go to continue their practices or games, and have those details ironed out. Is that something you're committed to?
Absolutely. And so we expect construction to happen in early 2027. So as soon as this phase kicks off, we can start looking into that.
And tell me how you're going to do that.
So it would be an overlay of, where the berm and the first phase fall on existing fields, and then going through and seeing who plays there and where do we have room at McConnell or at Christopher Lee or at the parks near Castle Island to see if we can accommodate those disruptions and keep the leagues in the neighborhood.
Okay. The major Christopher Lee is more of a Little League field. And, the Babe Ruth is a bigger field. So how would we deal with that issue?
I think we also have, a lot of other options. I think if we expand the scope a little bit outside of South Boston and start looking a little outside of the Parks Department parks.
Where would that be, though?
Again, I think that's all work that we can get into once we have a confirmed alignment for the first phase.
Yeah, but I know we still have time, but I would like to get commitments on those types of specifics, because I want to make sure my constituents, my neighbors, and my son have a place to play baseball or soccer or any type of sport. But I really want to get commitments on how we're going to make that change, the impact it will have, but also be specific of where kids can play sports during this phase of construction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're very happy to work with you and obviously with the leagues on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And those are the types of, Madam Chair?
I apologize. One more question or two more questions? Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to continue. I have a lot of questions, but is that all you're limiting me is 2 questions?
No, I don't want to limit you at all. I'm just looking at time, and I know that we have folks that have come here to provide public testimony, so I'm just trying to be respectful of their time. But, I think maybe 2, and then we'll go to public testimony, and then if you have more questions, we'll come back.
Okay. Chris, on this specific grant that we're voting on in the immediate future, tell me about the grant itself. When did the City of Boston actually apply for the grant?
The grant itself, the application period opened, I think, in March of 2021. The way this grant is administered, Boston itself is a subrecipient to MEMA. MEMA is the one that actually puts in the application. The city applied, I believe, in December of 2021. The state submitted it in January of 2022. And as Maren showed on that timeline, we essentially were in a category of identified for further review by FEMA in 2022, and then there was a series of 4 requests for information. RFIs is what they're labeled on the chart that you'll see, and that's what happened over basically between 2022 and late 2024, and then it was earlier this year that we received the notice to proceed, and this will allow us then to accept these funds.
Okay, and I'm going to ask one more question. So just on, I know we have some outstanding issues on the scheduling and relating to athletic fields. Could I schedule a Zoom meeting with you
Absolutely.
and with the various coaches or commissioners of the sports league and have a kind of a discussion about some of the questions I asked, but maybe get some responses from you? Yep. Again, I don't want to do it, not next week. I want to obviously give you guys enough time to go over some of the answers that I already asked. Those will basically be the same questions.
I think we would not only be willing to do it, we'd be excited to do it, because I think it's exactly the sort of conversations we want to be having and have been having.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, and maybe we'll do that in mid-September. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I just have to say, too, the Parks Department has always been wonderful in accommodating construction schedules, at least when it comes to Ryan Playground in Charlestown. The Charlestown Little League was there, and we worked in partnership, all of the elected officials and the Little League and everybody, to find an adequate placement, and they're going to have a beautiful, modern 21st century field there that is also resilient. So very excited about that. Okay, we'll go to in-person testimony. First up, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and your neighborhood or organization. We'll go to Linda, and then Mercy, Keith, and then Hassan. Please feel free to come up to either of the microphones here for your 2-minute remarks. And just remember to state your name and then either your neighborhood, organization, or both. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Coletta Zapata and members of the Council's Committee on Environmental Justice, Resiliency, and Parks. My name is Linda Orell. I'm the Chief Impact Officer with Boston Harbor Now, a regional nonprofit. We are grateful for the opportunity to testify in support of the $1.17 million FEMA grant to support Moakley Park. Boston Harbor Now prioritizes a climate-resilient waterfront that protects communities from flooding while activating waterfront spaces that welcome everyone. For the last 5 years, we've had the joy of partnering with the Boston Parks and Recreations Department, South Boston and Accione and South Boston Neighborhood House, and many other local groups to expand diverse multi-generational programming at Moakley Park. Since we started monthly cleanups in 2020, hundreds of volunteers have removed over 3,000 pounds of trash from the park. In 2021, during feedback sessions, community members requested programming that provides access to arts, music, and youth sports, and we delivered. Fast forward to today, we are thrilled to co-host more than 20 annual events throughout all seasons for thousands of local residents, like Southeast Summer Nights, which includes dinner, education, soccer, volleyball, and a range of live entertainment. And this year, we're thrilled to be working with artist Posey Moulton, who's leading the community in creating a 3D mural and sculpture made out of marine debris and plastics collected from monthly cleanups that will be temporarily installed at Moakley Park. While we foster a vibrant park and waterfront space, there is still more important work to do. As you've heard, Moakley Park floods frequently, even during mild rain events, making recreational amenities, including athletic fields, unusable. Moakley Park is also a major flood pathway to communities beyond the neighborhood, potentially impacting the expressway and adjacent neighborhoods. Boston Harbor Now strongly supports the city's efforts to manage flooding and stormwater by renovating the park for both recreation and resiliency. We are excited about the opportunity for the city to receive the FEMA BRIC grant to enable the city to protect, restore, and improve the park and its recreational amenities, as well as protect thousands of nearby residents, their homes, and transportation infrastructure from flooding, while at the same time reimagining the park in a way that serves the needs of local residents and visitors. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Linda. Next up, we have Mercy and then Keith.
Sorry, I'm not so formal. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mercy Robinson. I am the Executive Director for South Boston en Acción. As a community-based organization primarily serving the residents of Mary Ellen McCormick and Lynch Homes at Old Colony and West Broadway, South Boston en Acción understands firsthand the importance of being proactive rather than reactive when it comes to protecting our neighborhoods. Sea level rise is not only imminent, it is accelerating faster than scientists predicted. This threat does not stand alone. The dangers from storm surges and the potential hurricanes compound the risk we face. Over the past several years, we have witnessed an increase in flooding across South Boston. And these events are no longer isolated or rare. They are becoming a new reality. It is time for precise, informed, and urgent action. The planned renovations and the berm at Moakley Park are essential measures to safeguard the safety and well-being of our community, especially those most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. As a mother and community organizer, I utilize the park for multiple reasons today. It is my safe haven year-round. From the autumn strolls with my dog Alexis, the spring days hanging out by the community garden, to the long summer days where you find yourself kicking back at one of our Southeast summer nights with friends and family. Make Moakley Yours speaks deeply to me because I have grown up in this park. Not only do I wish that for my children to be able to do the same, but for generations to come. I have been involved in this project for 4 years now. It has been a great pleasure of mine to partner with the City of Boston Parks and Rec, Boston Harbor Now, and the exceptional individuals across various disciplines to activate the park. To bring the community together, not only for reprieve from our daily bustle, but to also learn and educate themselves on matters that impact them and their neighbors. I would love to continue this fantastic work. South Boston en Acción is in full support of this project. We see it not just as an investment in infrastructure, but as a commitment to preserving lives, protecting homes, and ensuring the future generations can thrive in a safer, more resilient South Boston. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. Keith and then Hassan.
Hello, everybody. My name's Keith. I am the owner of Pride Sports Boston. We rent that field for Moakley Park, many fields for thousands of hours every year. The fields are very much not playable and not safe. So our kids that are out there, our friends that are playing there, it is, we could figure out where to put other teams and players, but I think the important thing is that this park gets done. It needs to get done. There are many weeks that we are there. I am, shoveling out water to make it playable. I'm doing what I can to have games. This park is, many cities don't have this opportunity to have such a big space that can, and it is very exciting. It's such an exciting project. And I wish that this can really go through, because this can host national tournaments, the money that could come into the city from having that, and that's just speaking the bigger picture, but locally with our players in our community, this park has so much potential, and it is right now being wasted on how it currently is. So totally in favor of this happening, so let's pass it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Keith. Next up, we have Hassan Faruqi.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify. My name is Hassan Faruqi. I'm the Executive Director of the Boston Climate Action Network, and I live in the South End. And I'm here to testify in support of all of the grants that are at issue in this hearing. All of these present really important opportunities to address the needs that I testified to the last time I was in front of your committee, which is around the fact that we have a very challenging funding environment now, more challenging than I think we've ever seen from the federal government. And that means we need to capture and leverage every dollar available from every source to continue investing and protecting our residents. The challenges that we see here of flooding from sea level rise, flooding from stormwater, and extreme heat can be mitigated through the projects that will be invested in through these grants. And these are not far off future challenges. They are things that we see here and now. In fact, a couple weeks ago at an event in Dorchester that we co-sponsored, one of our community members passed out from likely heat stroke after being in the sunlight. This was during 80-degree temperatures. And we know, of course, extreme heat events become more intense, more frequent every passing year. We've seen that this week. So these investments cannot come soon enough, and we hope that we can make these investments without delay, both with respect to these grants as well as to the many future opportunities that we'll have to fund this in different ways. And so we appreciate your leadership, Madam Chair, and we look forward to working with you and the administration and our many other partners on implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. A minute, 30 seconds. Great, thank you. We've also, we got a letter from the Mystic River Watershed Association just saying that they're writing to encourage the City Council of Boston to continue the improvements from the park's capital budget as well as these grants in support of Moakley Park, specifically docket 1258. I want to thank Patrick Caron, the Executive Director, for sending that. I'm just confirming that we don't have anybody online. Oh, Karishma, I don't think that we have anybody online. But in the interim, Councillor Flynn, we'll have 5 more minutes for questioning if you have anything for this particular docket, and then we really need to move to docket 1375, or excuse me, 1345. Thank you.
And thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I will not ask further questions, but I do feel and I felt like it was important for my constituents to understand exactly what how this grant would impact them. I know there's a lot of interest citywide about passing this immediately, but I do want to do my due diligence and ask as many questions as I can, because those are the questions my constituents ask me when I'm in South Boston, which I'm in there every night, and I'm at Moakley Park at least 4 nights a week watching my son play baseball. So it's important for me to get back to my constituents with answers that they have. That's why I ask detailed questions, and I wanted to have a hearing on this because I felt it was important for my constituents, including residents in public housing. I felt it was important for them to be heard and to understand exactly what impact this beautiful new park would have on them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to, you all are welcome to stay, but also free to go. We'll go to docket 1345, building the workforce to improve tree cover citywide. So this is the $644,458 from the U.S. Forest Service. And I want to thank everybody for your testimony and for showing up today and your advocacy. I apologize, I neglected to say that. So thank you so much for being here and everybody tuned in online. Thanks y'all. Okay, we'll go to Joseph Lee from the Worker Empowerment Cabinet. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councillor Flynn for your time today. As mentioned, this is to accept and expend a grant through the U.S. Forestry Service for $644,458. For those that don't know, Power Corps is a program that the Office of Workforce Development runs. It's a 10-month training program that includes tracks in urban forestry and building operations. Participants that range from 18 to 30. And they get a bi-weekly stipend of $1,100 through their participation on top of certifications and future job prospects. So over the last 3 years, yes, we've had 4 cohorts, so 125 graduates. 70% of these graduates have career lifting outcomes, so that could be a green job, a quality non-green job, introductions to the trade unions, or furthering education or training. And of that 70%, 87% have directly gone into the green industry. That could be either building operations, so it could be going in and doing home assessments, or it could be directly related to trees. Some of the folks that we've had in our programs have landed jobs with the city, Franklin Park Zoo, Schneider Electric, Barrett Tree Services, and Partier Gardens, just to name a few. And just to highlight the great work they've done. So our cohort 4, which recently just graduated this past summer, had planted 43 trees throughout the city, enhanced 233 acres of public land through active and conservation efforts, removed over 248 bags of invasive materials, removed over 3,600 square feet of invasive species in the White Stadium area and recycled over 62.8 pounds of waste at the ENC Pine Bank Mansion to just promote more sustainability efforts. And recently, just to kind of build on, the need for more funding, we actually did apply and were granted a Mass CEC Students, Young, and Adults Equity Workforce Climate Service Corps Award. So this is really going to focus on clean energy and building efficiency, and that was for another $375,000. So looking forward to that hearing to accept and expend those dollars as well, so we can get an out. But really, this grant is going to really focus on the stipends and training for these folks, so that way they are able to add to our tree canopy, but also maintain. We are also looking to hire an arborist through this to help with training. I know the city has many, but it's different to go out and go to a tree and look at it and prune a tree rather than to teach somebody how to go out and do that. So we are looking for the right person to not only upskill and train our folks, but also help them identify invasive species and just understand best practices. So it is very important that we get this grant accepted and expended as soon as possible, so that way we can continue to fund these youth that have identified as wanting to go into the green space, but also to maintain the green workforce that we need to continue to be the greenest city in the U.S. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and I appreciate your patience too, going through all of that. In hindsight, maybe I should have done the MVP grant and then you and then this, but okay, that's fine, maybe moving forward.
No worries at all.
But I appreciate it, and thank you for your work too. I'm always happy to hear that we're trying to invest more resources in planting more trees, especially in environmental justice communities like East Boston and Charlestown. We have some of the lowest tree canopy numbers in the city, not the lowest, I think that is in District 2. But really grateful to hear that this will help fund a number of folks. You had mentioned that, and I just have one question.
Yep.
So this is supposed to focus on the stipends and the training. Can you just repeat I'm sorry if I missed this, but the amount of stipend per person, and then how many folks we're hoping to hire as part of this particular grant?
So it's $1,100 biweekly, so $550 a week. Right now, over the course, it's probably going to be about 10 to 15. Just directly through this funding, we do have other funding that go in range up to the full 60 participants. But for this particular grant, it would be about up to 15. It also does include equipment, so renting tree, wood chippers and things like that are also included in this. So it is a full functioning grant, not only for stipends and training, but also making sure they have the materials and equipment to correctly, dispose of any invasive species, or needing, if there is a need to clear land to plant a new tree. And I know the team has also been working with the city to look at things, especially around the flexi grip around the base of the trees with the rat problem and burrowing happening. How do we use that flexi grip to make sure that newly planted trees don't get attacked by our furry friends as they get planted?
Thank you so much. That's it for me. I appreciate this, your work, and I appreciate the fact that you're going after these grants and that we're able to deploy them in such a meaningful way in the city. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. I'll just make one comment and one question. First, my comment. Joseph, I see you often in the community, especially in the weekends or at nighttime. You do an exceptional job representing the city, representing the residents of Boston. You're listening to people, you're engaging them, you're answering questions. So I just want to acknowledge your professionalism, because I've seen you and noticed you many times, and just want to say thank you for your commitment to the residents of the city.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, and then my second question, and I know this is more focused on the stipend and the training, and I mentioned at the beginning that District 2 is the lowest number of trees in the city, and I focused on South Boston, but I also, for this question, I want to focus on Chinatown.
Yeah.
Probably has the lowest number of trees of any neighborhood. And maybe you might have some ideas, but what are your thoughts about how we go forward in Chinatown in trying to bring more trees to the neighborhood, so people have so the temperature can be reduced, but also some people can have some shade, cool off. But the sun is very pounding for people, and there's really no place to escape outside. Trees that are incredibly important, but just want to see what your thoughts might be.
Yeah, that's a great question. Councilor, I know at the beginning of PowerCore, they've really focused on the southern part of the city. And I know there are talks of obviously moving up. So it's going to be important for us to continue to attack and go after grants like this, because that's the only way we will be able to cover the entire city in trees and blanket them correctly. So it's just a matter of the grants making themselves available. And then our team, as you know, Chief Nguyen is a relentless advocate for going after dollars. So if there's an opportunity for us to go after dollars, we are. And then making sure that we have the people trained to maintain what trees there are in Chinatown, first and foremost, right? Because trees age, they do lose their lushness, their ability to cover. But also working with David Jefferson, who is the ED of PowerCore, to identify the neighborhoods that we can identify. And Chinatown is high on our list. So it is a neighborhood that we are identifying. I know Dorchester Ave is another area that we're looking at. It's a major street, has a major parade, and I have marched in that parade many a times and thought to myself every year, why am I doing this? Because there is nowhere to escape the sun. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at expanding our neighborhood coverage. But with that being said, given we've had, and I believe at the last hearing, Councilor Coletta Zapata learned that we actually lost a grant due to some of the federal funding. So, we are trying to continue to go after to make up some of those dollars that we did lose due to the federal government not understanding tree coverage is for everybody. It's not a political game because trees don't vote or don't have the ability to think in that way. But definitely we'll bring it back to our team to highlight Chinatown, Southie, the South End, and Charlestown as areas that we need to expand into, because it is important to get out of our kind of Roxbury focused look on it and move into those areas. So definitely happy to sit with you, Councilor, and any other members of the Chinatown neighborhood associations to think of areas we can easily attack and get trees planted in those neighborhoods.
Just to add one thing to Joseph's comment, who covered it very well. The Parks Department and the Office of Climate Resilience are working with the Chinatown community on, to your question around sort of new approaches around providing trees within Chinatown, to something which we hope to pilot this fall. Happy to similarly connect with you, with your office on that, which we expect to be able to pilot something on Harrison Ave between Beach and Neyland.
No, that would be great. Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Chris. And maybe just a follow-up comment or question. Obviously, Chinatown sits right on the highway system. Mm-hmm. The 93 is there, but also the Mass Pike is there. It's a major truck road from Maine to Florida, basically, but also the South Station train and South Station bus. I guess my point is, and I've done walkthroughs with a group called Mothers Out Front.
Yes.
And one of their major issues was trees being impacted by the gas coming from the ground, gas leaks. But what impact does the physical environment where Chinatown rests in the Leather District, but right on the highway system, does that greatly negatively impact how we plant trees in Chinatown?
I don't have the specifics, but I would say yes, just because the amount of vibration and movement through it would probably make it very, it's unsettling ground, right? It's constantly shifting, it's constantly moving. So as trees get rooted, that, it's like any other plant, right? If you shake it enough, it's going to lessen and loosen itself up, not completely die per se, but will, become weaker. So we are working with Mass Audubon and the state and DCR to understand kind of the effects of what that looks like. We obviously want to get as many trees, but also want to make sure that there isn't any kind of infrastructure damage done as trees get older, roots, lines get deeper, get thicker, and there are other impacts that we have to look at. And unfortunately, a lot of that land isn't city-owned. It is privately owned and/or state-owned. So it's also working with those partners to say, hey, we need more trees, but we also understand, we have to play ball with those folks to put the right trees in and not disrupt kind of what's already there, short of, building, closing that area of the pike down or rerouting 93, which is not my area of expertise, nor do I ever want it to be my area of expertise.
No, thank you, Joseph. I appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you, Chris, as well for the work you're doing. Madam Chair, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I just want to again echo gratitude and thank you all for being here. I don't have any further questions. I think it's safe to say that I feel comfortable pushing this forward at our next meeting to vote on. I look forward to voting in the affirmative to get this money out and just really trying to bring a level of urgency to the work that has already been done since 2018, 2021, 2022, and get this going. I do think, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm seeing in real time that there was somebody who signed up and has since then logged off, so I think we're okay with public testimony. And so with that, I'm very proud to say that we had a productive hearing, and I look forward to bringing this forward, and this hearing on docket 1258, 1345, and 1347 is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.